Welcome to the OMG Show.
Hello and welcome to the OMG Show. Today is a topic that hits really close to home for me. I had a question come in regarding, how do we start a business when we don't have the funds or the courage to start? So today's episode is going to be all about that, right? Finding the courage, finding the funds to actually move forward on maybe a dream you have, an idea that's been lingering in the back of your head. Some kind of new thing that you want to do, but you're just not sure how you want to move forward. We're going to be tackling all these different things, and I can only talk to you from my experience, right? So I was in the corporate world and I was having an okay time, right? I loved the people that I worked with, but the actual work and the environment that I was in, it was draining me. The person who I was graduating from college to the person I was immediately after that job was like night and day. I had, gained a tremendous amount of weight. My relationships were suffering. I just was not happy. My day consisted of, a 1.5 hour drive to work, followed by taking phone calls I didn't want to take, to then drive home at the end of the night to just pretty much try to find some fast food because I didn't want to cook, and then binge something on Netflix. And it was like that for a good year, and I could feel that essence who I was just wasn't burning, right? So what I did was I managed to pull out my 401k. I moved in with a client who happened to be my first client, and gave them a 2 months notice, left, and then smashed out a pretty successful business that has led to many opportunities to now where I am here today, giving you my advice. And so what I want you to know is that it's two different things, but really the most important one is understanding that you actually do have the courage inside of you. You have something within you. You know that you don't necessarily fit into the mold. You know that when people are thinking one way, you tend to think the other way. And so what ends up happening for most people that are in the situation is they start to think that maybe they're a little off, right? Like, why can't I be like X, Y, and Z, right? So that's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it is that you acknowledge the way you think and you're proud of it, right? You're excited about it. And that's a very different situation, because for me, I was in that category where I was comparing myself to, how come I can't just be happy with what I have? I'm grateful for everything, but I'm still just not happy. I knew there was something else, right? And I was trying to figure out how I can make this happen. And, to give you some perspective, I was thinking about leaving my job about 1.5 years before I actually even did it. I just never had the courage to actually go with it, because again, all the self-doubt starts to kick in. How am I going to pay for this? What are people going to think? What about my family? What about my future? What if I fail? What will my friends think of me? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All these different thoughts were coming in, and, it wasn't making the situation even better until finally, I realized what I wanted out of my life. I looked at, who do I want to become? What legacy do I want to leave behind? How do I want to provide for those that I care about? What kind of life do I want to have with this future family I want to create? Okay. How do I want my relationships to be with the people around me? And when I started answering those questions, it was, clear that the only possible option was to go out and do something on my own, to create something on my own. Right. It wasn't because I just wasn't unhappy being at the 9 to 5 or anything like that. It was because I knew what I wanted out of my life. I figured out, at least at that time, what I thought I wanted, and that was enough to get me over the hump. You see, one of the greatest books you can read is called The Power of Now, and it was introduced to me by one of my mentors who said, not everybody is ready for this book, but it seems like you are, and this book is a game changer. So to this day, I still haven't read the entire book, but just reading through the first couple chapters have made pretty much a lasting impact. And one of the biggest lessons that I learned from reading The Power Now was the fact that there are no problems, only situations. And at that time in my life, I was looking at my environment, my surroundings, and thinking of it as problems. Like, I have to go to work. That's a problem. I have to do this work I don't want to do. That's a problem, right? I have to get this presentation ready. That's a problem. It was problem after problem after problem. What this book taught me was that really it's a situation, right? Life is already hard enough, so situations allow you to get out of it, right? They have an exit plan, an exit strategy attached to them. So I started looking at my entire life as a situation, and I was asking myself, am I happy with the situation or not? And when I realized that I was not, I was, okay, how do we now change this situation for the positive? Okay. And once that clicked, then it just made sense as far as like, that's the only option we can do. Let's just move forward with it. And it came from a place of understanding. I wasn't nervous. It wasn't an erratic decision. It's just, I knew that's what I had to do. Okay. Now, don't get me wrong. It was also very important that I had a ton of support, right? I spoke to my family. My family thought that I was a little crazy. They had the same concerns, but at the end of the day, they were like, no matter what, we got your back, right? And I understand that many don't have that, okay? But at least now we're in a situation where you can choose your own family, right? You have the family that you were born into, right? But you also have the ability to choose your family. These are your closest friends, your colleagues, so-and-so, right? And those are the people that I would reach out to and see what they think, because more often than not, they're going to surprise you with how much they're willing to support you. All right. And that support is going to come in handy down the road when you actually make the decision to go ahead and do your own thing. Okay. Now, going back to the power of now, the other thing that I learned from that book was that the more you resist something, the greater the pain becomes. Right. So for about 1.5 years, I was resisting this idea of wanting to be who I want to be, right? Of wanting to, I saw this person in my head. I knew what that Oscar 2.0 looked like. What, not how they actually looked like, but the lifestyle that they had, the circumstances surrounding that individual. And I kept thinking to myself, that's what I want. And so I was putting that off for 1.5 years until it came to a point where I just couldn't take it anymore. I was scared of the fact that I would never actually become that person. And in fact, one of my favorite quotes, and I'm going to screw this up, but one of my favorite quotes is, the greatest definition of hell is when you meet the person you could have become. I'm not sure where I got that from, but it's a quote that resonates with me profoundly, because I look at my family, which is a huge motivating factor for me. I look at my friends, and I look at, more importantly, the one life that I have. And I feel it's my obligation to put as much of myself out there so I can become the best version of myself. That way I don't waste a life. And so when going back to looking at that situation, that pain had become so great that that's when I finally took action and decided to, you know what, I need to make a change. I need to move forward. Okay. So it comes back to asking yourself, are you happy with the circumstances around you? And then painting a picture of who you actually want to become. Who is that person? Make it real, right? Who is, insert your name 5-10 years from now. Like when you think of yourself as like, dang, that's a boss right there. What does that person have? What's the lifestyle? What's their daily routine? This goes into kind of like the power of visualization, where, I was fortunate enough to sit in on a session with Jim Quick. I highly recommend you follow him. And he was talking about the power of visualization. And he made this exercise where everyone, can rotate as far back as you possibly can. And he's like, okay, now close your eyes and imagine yourself twisting all the way around. How does your body feel? How do your feet move? How do your knees move? Now imagine twisting yourself 360 degrees, right? How does that feel? What do you think? And when we did the exercise again, everyone was able to go even further, at least by 25%. There was at least a 25% increase in everyone's rotation, just by the power of visualization. So sit down somewhere quiet, maybe put on some mood music or something, but visualize who you want to be. Visualize that person, right? What do they smell like? What do they eat like? What do they look like? How do they wake up? How do they act? How do they walk? The more you can make that image real, the more of a possibility it can become. It goes from being abstract to being something rational and in reality. All right. And so I've talked a good deal about courage, but really that's kind of where it comes from, because once you identify what you want, you'll figure out how you can survive. And when it comes to funding how to actually get started, there are many different ways that you can get started. For one, you can go out and get a business loan, right? I wouldn't recommend that, but you can also do a GoFundMe. You can do a Kickstarter. You can ask your friends and families for cash. It doesn't take a lot to get your business going. Okay, all you really need is a domain, which will cost you around $12, hosting for the year on a shared server. Don't need to get complicated. That's about $12 a month as well. So 144 plus, let's say, $15, right? So now you're like at 150, 160 right there. And then you would need you could use PayPal, which is free. They charge you for the transaction. And then, that's really it. Once you have the website and a way to accept money, now you start figuring out how to create offers or services, and you're ready to go, right? Granted, that doesn't include the fees for like a lawyer and setting it all up, but to get a business going, it does not take as much as you think, right? You want to start a podcast, you can start a podcast for free. You want to start a YouTube channel, you can start a YouTube channel for free, right? There's so many platforms out there where you're able to send out a message. And if you're thinking about, okay, well, how am I gonna get clients? If you're thinking about doing a service-based business, right? Taking straight out of Gary Vee's notebook is you want to make sure you put yourself out of business with your own content, meaning you give the best of the best away for free. Okay, the way I did it was credit cards. Okay, I ran up my credit card debt when I first started my business, but I was using that for paid traffic. So the idea was to use the credit cards to run ads to a paid offer. And the first couple times I did it, I lost a lot of money. But then I eventually figured out how, if I spend $1, how to make $10 back. And that's how I was able to recuperate all that. But it's a learning lesson. Everything is a learning lesson. But it all starts with being courageous enough to take that action. You see, you have one life. You have a gift inside of you. Right? There's a fire, there's a flame in there that's brewing, that knows, that wants something else, that knows that it's meant for more. Right? And, I'm going to go in a little bit of a rant here, but many of us are in this system where you're meant to be a cog when you don't want to be a cog. Right? You're meant for more. You're meant for something greater. And it's scary because the system, everything around you isn't set up for you to want to go ahead and do your own thing. Because even when you start a business, there's a lot of other things that you might have never considered, like taxes for one reason, right? And so there's so many different things that, once you decide to cross that threshold, you start becoming more and more aware of. But at the end of the day, it starts with you being courageous enough to do it. And I think the biggest thing to find that courage inside of you is to realize that you only have one life. And this person that you want to become is fairly feasible to do as long as you're willing to put in the work and grind for it. At the end of the day, the question you need to ask yourself is, are you worth it? Are you worth it? Right? We put a lot of love into others, but do you have enough love for yourself to go out and take that plunge? And it's something that when you're ready to take that plunge, I'll be right here to help you out. And not just me, but there's an entire community of people out there that are doing their thing, that are starting their businesses, that are making mistakes, that are taking 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. But we're all here waiting and willing and ready to help you. So it's just a matter of you understanding if your current situation, if it's a big enough pain for you to actually take action and change your situation up if you want something more. And I think you totally can. All right. So this episode went a little bit longer than intended, but it's just something that hits very close to home for me. And, I believe that a lot of people out there, just myself included, really dilute our own power and what we're actually capable of doing. But you're capable of doing so much more than you think. And, we may have never met in person, but if you're listening to this, just know and understand that if you are willing to take that plunge. You know, there's a whole community of people here that have also done that plunge. So you're not doing it alone. You're not alone. Okay. It's been done before. People are doing it right now. It's okay, and it'll be okay. Okay. So there's also many opportunities for you to start a business without you having to completely lose your job or quit your job, right? And there's plenty of ways you can do it without having to create any products. You know, I created a video on my YouTube channel talking about, you know, how to start a business without losing your shirt. And if you're interested in that, I recommend you go watch it. But anyways, we're going to wrap this up today because we're going on to, 16 minutes here. But thank you so much for listening to this show. If you like today's episode, which is very different from the other ones, go ahead to oscarmgarcia.com/free and make sure you sign up for my ultimate automatic sales system for online businesses. It's going to show you the 4 proven methods to make sure you have your business that runs on autopilot, right? And it'll show you, what I use to run my business, and it'll also help you too, even if you're just starting out as well. All right. Thank you so much, and make sure you tell your friends about this episode. And if you know that this episode at least helped you, and you know at least one other person who it could help, feel free to share it with them. Thanks so much, and I'll see you in the next episode of the OMG Show. Thanks.